guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a quick first impressions video for you on a Kunwu knife. This is the first time I've had a Kunwu. I've handled a couple at different meetups and stuff, but this is the first one I've owned. I did get this from House of Knives, and I've got to give those guys a little bit of a shout out because one, they had the best price in Canada on this, and two, the shipping with FedEx was amazing. In fact, it was like overnight. So I may be motivated in future purchases to use that FedEx shipping option instead of Canada Post, even when they're back from being on strike. So let's go ahead and get into this. Comes with a pouch. I kind of like this option as opposed to the zipper pouch that, you know, everyone's kind of using these. And this is pretty nice. I actually kind of like this as a touch. A couple of stickers here. I don't love the stickers, but that's great. Microfiber cloth, some silica gel, replacement clip. And let's get to the knife itself. Here we go. Okay, look at that. Very cool. So yeah, all of you watching will likely know that this is the Kunwu Gringo. I think what I might do is just stuff this stuff in the bag. Seems like a good storage solution. If it'll fit. Well, maybe it won't. Well, forget it. I'll have to pick it up after the video is over. Let me just get it out of the way so you can take a good look at this. First of all, this is the stonewash version of this knife. There you go. Kunwu has done a really nice job on the blade finish here. The handle is a different texture than I've seen before. I have done a little bit of research to know that they call this like honeydew or, you know, cantaloupe. And it really does. If you take a look at this, it reminds you of the skin of a cantaloupe. Now, I'm not going to hold that against the knife, even though I do not like cantaloupes. They just don't taste right to me, okay? It's sort of like it's a fruit that's trying to be a vegetable or a vegetable that's trying to be a fruit, and it just misses both marks. Anyway, that is the handle texture, and I've got to say it's a very grippy texture. This does feel pretty good in hand. So let me first give you a rundown of a couple of things that made me really, really interested about this, not the least of which is the steel. So let's see, can I get you? There you go. This is S390 Steel, which is not a steel we've seen a lot before. And I will say, I did a little bit of research, and primarily this is a steel for high heat cutting applications. So in, you know, drill bits, high-speed drill bits and end mills and that kind of stuff where it's going to be moving really fast. Very, very high performance steel for that regard. But the big thing that it does is that it can get hot and still retain its hardness. Well, I'm not going to be getting this hot, okay? I guess maybe someday I'm going to use it to need it to cauterize a wound or something. I don't want to heat it up, but no, in fact, I won't be doing that. But that is one weird thing. Now, on the other hand, Kunwu has used this because it takes a very high level of hardness. It has pretty decent toughness for knives of that, for steels that get that hard. And by all accounts, it's pretty grindable. So that means it should, okay, be nicer to sharpen than what its HRC and edge retention indicate. And the HRC is one of the big stories here. This is hardened to 65 to 67 HRC, which is absolutely ridiculous. And so, you know, it kind of makes sense if you can get a steel to get that hard. I think steels like Maximet and Rex 121 and some of those other very high performance steels can also attain similar numbers. Okay, but that is just wild. 65 to 67 HRC. That's pretty cool. And to do that and still retain a decent amount of toughness. One of the things that Maximet steels got that the Spyderco Maximet steels got some issues with, where people would complain about chipping. And presumably, you know, this, I'm literally just opening the box. I'm just telling you what I've been reading. Presumably this may perform a little bit better than that. So that would be really, really cool. Jared over at Neves Knives also sharpened this steel and said it sharpened reasonably well. That is, sometimes a really high Rockwell hardness steel just is impossible to sharpen. And he said this was pretty good. So, all of those things were very, very interesting to me. And so to have this interesting steel in a really good package, by the way, in terms of overall utility and size and all these other things that I like, not to mention this is a great looking knife in itself, just absolutely fantastic. So we'll get into some of those details to greater degree when we get to the full review down the road. Okay, next thing I want to touch on is something I wish all knives had, and I feel like all knives could, and companies just don't do it. But these have dual row ceramic bearings, which is great. That also means that there's enough space in there that if you want to switch out to skiff bearings, it should be a good option for you. I mean, you can pretty well always switch to skiff bearings, but you may be stuck with single row skiff bearings instead of dual row. So I'm really, really happy that they're using larger bearings. I wish we saw that much, much more. I also wish we saw roller bearings much, much more. I better hurry up because I'm getting past my usual first impressions time frame. It is a frame lock. They've left just a little bit of an edge on this frame, so it makes it actually really comfortable to get a hold of. Gotta love that. Beautiful pivot collar there. Check that out. I don't know if I can get it to catch the light really well, but maybe I'll have to get some outdoor shots of this and post them on Instagram. Lock bar access is really nice. Action is really nice. The other thing that stands out to me right away as soon as I got this in hand was they have dialed this detent so well. I'm not a big front flipper guy, but this works really consistently. I've never had an issue with this. I mean, I haven't had it long, but normally out of box, here's what I'm trying to say. Normally out of box with a new front flipper, there's that awkward stage where you got to figure out how to make this thing work. And that just never happened with this. I could just get it out and front flip it immediately, which I really, really like. Of course, it does have the deployment hole for a great reverse flick, which once again, I think is awesome. All right, gotta love that. Very fidgety knife for something so large. I really am impressed with that. The grip area is about the only thing. Like, it's fine for me, but it's just fine for me. And I know from past knives that when it comes in at around 3 1/4, which it does, that just fits my hand. And so if you have hands much bigger than mine, that could be a bit of an issue for you. Although the other thing I love about this knife is it has the option to choke up. So you can kind of come up to this position and it works again really, really well in that position. So yeah, very, very nice. The ergonomics on this are definitely good for larger hands. If you have like really, really XL hands, it could be a slight problem. The texturing is great. You could switch this clip out. I haven't had a chance to put this in pocket. You can see milled titanium clip. All reports seem to be pretty good. But I'll have to, again, comment more when we get to the point of a full review. Finally, let me give you the size on this before I give you sort of my overall thoughts, okay? So 8 7/16 overall. So just a hair under 8.5 inches in total. The blade length is 3 5/8. The cutting edge is 3 3/8. I've already mentioned 3 1/4 inches of grip area, but then you've got lots of extra space. In fact, you can kind of choke down on this and let your pinky sit here, or you can choke up on it. There is a really comfortable finger choil and a great spot with that harpoon blade shape. I love when that provides a really nice thumb ramp, which it does in this case it very, very well. So in terms of, again, space, pretty well done. Oh, I should mention the closed size of this knife is going to be 4 13/16. All right, so just a little over 4 3/4, which honestly for a knife that's this big with this much blade is very impressive. Finally, it weighs in at 5.9 ounces, which for, again, a full titanium frame lock of this size with this amount of blade, this is a very wide blade. That is completely reasonable. And I've said this many, many times in the past, and I'm sure I'll say it many times in the future. But for me, that blade, that weight of around 6 ounces is completely fine. Honestly, anything under, I don't really start noticing a big difference until I get to like 7.5, 8.5 ounces. At that point, I start going, oh man, this is a bit hefty in pocket. But a knife that weighs even just a little bit more than this is going to be the Benchmade Adamas. I carry this quite frequently in like a pair of jeans or a pair of cargo shorts. I do not notice the weight of this at all. So I'm just pointing that out so that you get my sensitivity. You may put this knife in your pocket and feel like, you know, you're leaning to one side and you're kind of drifting to your right whenever you walk. For me, not that big of a deal. Okay, overall, what do I think of this knife? Okay, the design is absolutely beautiful. The finish is really, really cool. To me, this strikes a really, really great balance between a high-end, high pride of ownership, unique knife, but also a really capable cutting tool. And that's always been the spot that I really feel like a knife needs to shine. Like when it just combines all of the things that I like from a utility standpoint and a bunch of cool stuff from a design and finish standpoint, where kind of high-end meets functionality. That to me is just the perfect combination. And I really think this does a great job with all of that. I guess the one drawback would be if you're not prepared, this is not going to be a stainless steel. So it's going to need a little more care. But of course, the reason most people are buying this is because they want that extra performance, and they're willing to sacrifice the stainlessness for better edge retention and toughness, which, you know, that's just something you kind of, you know, you've got to play with all those variables. And so if you want certain ones to be maximized, you end up having to sacrifice some others. So there you go. My first thoughts on the Kunwu Gringo. Very, very impressive knife, and one that I'm pretty excited to own and be able to get my hands on. And I'm looking forward to carrying this a lot because this, again, is exactly the kind of knife that I like to have in my pocket. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.